So the stronger than expected showing at the president's fundraiser, in spite of the widespread condemnation of conservatives in the current political climate, may reflect a larger progressive unease, one that goes back all the way to the Mueller probe. As conservative commentator Victor Davis Hanson puts it tonight in an op-ed in the Hill News, he says all reflect a lack of progressive confidence that they can actually vote Trump out of office in the next election and instead seek to use extraordinary means to abort his presidency. Joining me now, Democratic strategist Dave Brown and conservative filmmaker and author Dinesh D'Souza. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Hey, Shannon.
Okay, so we saw the results of these fundraisers today where this, primary donor was under a lot of heat because of comments like this one we heard from Donnie Deutsch. Here's what he says about people who happen to support this president.
You can't say, well, I like his economic policy and whatnot, but I disagree with it. You own it. You own the blood that happens. You own Charlottesville. And that's what swing voters have got to understand and be shamed into.
Dinesh, your reaction?
Well, I think that American politics is entering a dangerous phase that I haven't seen in my adult lifetime. It is a phase in which discussion and debate is replaced with threats and intimidation, and those can escalate very quickly. We've seen this historically in Europe. Debates would quickly degenerate into blows and exchanges of fights in the street, and then, of course, things took an even darker turn. I'm a little worried about where our politics is going, because this is a case where when one side starts it, the other side has to respond. And so the Trumpsters aren't going to take all this lying down. Pretty soon they're going to be releasing Joaquin Castro's address and the names of members of his family. And so this is a game that two people can play.
Well, and Dave, do you worry that Democrats may face a lot of backlash? I mean, they are playing with fire here. When I think of Hillary Clinton talking about the basket of deplorables, and a lot of people then started to say, listen, you've completely disrespected me. Why would I ever think about voting for you? Now we have people out there saying, if you vote for the president, you're essentially a white supremacist. Are you going to alienate half the country?
Yeah, I reject that premise, Shannon, because if you look at 2018, when Democrats took back the House, they did that by winning and persuading hearts and minds a lot of folks who actually voted for the president in 2016. So I think there's a proven path here where if you make the best argument and you come at it from the perspective of your values and what you stand for as a candidate, and I agree with Dinesh, I think debate is the healthy way to go here. I'm glad we agree on that. But I think Democrats have demonstrated that they can win on the merits. So I disagree with the premise that it becomes this binary thing, Shannon.
Is calling people a white supremacist, I mean, is that debating things on the merits, or is that simply going to have, a bunch of people saying, listen, I'm nothing close to that, and now that you've labeled me that way, I'm not going to listen to anything else you say?
If that's directed to me, look, I'm sorry, Dinesh, go ahead.
Yeah, Dave.
Okay,
Dave. Thanks.
Yeah, look.
Well, I was just saying that we've had two incendiary mass shootings. In one case, there was clearly a guy who was anti-immigrant, a white supremacist. That was part of his motive. He was also progressive on other issues, but nevertheless, white supremacy was part of the mix. On the other hand, the Dayton shooter was pro-socialism. He was pro-Antifa. He said he'd vote for Elizabeth Warren. Now, interestingly, we hear very little media talk about that shooter, because after all, if you're going to ascribe motive, and motive not to just to the shooter, but claim that there's some insidious broader force at work, then I think we'd have to consider that Antifa has produced its first mass killer.
Dinesh, I think part of the distinction in the coverage, and I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of coverage here, but I think part of the distinction is the killer in Texas published a manifesto. So we have the written body of work from which we can examine and understand the motivation.
But again, people need to know as well, and I don't know if people have taken time to. A lot of people say, I'm not going to read one word of it. The guy doesn't deserve it, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But if you read it, you do see other things that he's very worried about: corporate profits, environmentalism, other issues that are certainly not right-leaning issues. But clearly, he had an issue with race. That's there. But there was a lot of other stuff that's got to be considered in that package as well. Shannon, if you read it.
And Shannon, look, I'll go back to your original question. The notion of painting in broad strokes anybody who voted for the president is a white supremacist. Of course not. That's a ridiculous assertion. But I think the point, and perhaps it's lost, the nuance is lost here, so let's try to have that nuance now. The point is that when you speak in rhetoric, and when the president speaks in rhetoric that is racialized, and there are white supremacists saying, we identify with this president, we think he's speaking on our behalf. In my mind, that is the problem, and that's what needs to be addressed. And I'm glad to see that the president outright condemned that kind of white supremacy following the shootings. But I think we have a ways to go in toning down that kind of rhetoric and making it clear that white supremacy in any form has no place in American discourse and in this country writ large.
Clearly. Finally to you, Dinesh.
Well, I think it's important to point out that this so-called racialized rhetoric that you're accusing Trump of using relies upon conflating a couple of distinctions. First of all, conflating the distinction between legal and illegal immigrants. The basic assumption is that Trump is sort of against immigrants. Now, I'm a legal immigrant. I'm a person of color.
I meant invasion
I don't feel that Trump has been critical.
Invasion and infestation.
Well, I mean, infestation was the term Elijah Cummings used about his own district. Infestation generally refers to a state of things when things have gotten so bad. And do you think that Trump would hesitate for one moment to call San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi's district, for example, infested, where there's the same kind of terrible schools, the same kind of trash on the streets?
Category of people,
all right,
Dinesh.
let's let Dinesh finish the sentence, and we got to go.
Sure.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that Trump's attacks are political. They're not racial. He attacks with the same glee people who are white or black or whatever. There's a certain kind of promiscuity in Trump in which he doesn't discriminate. Right. He's an equal opportunity mud wrestler.
Yeah, and he'll tell you that himself. But no mud wrestling tonight. Dave and Dinesh, great to have you both.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.